Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is a financial advisor, former golf pro, and social capitalist. Today's guest is Matt Stewart. Matt, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Thanks, Quentin. I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
For sure, man. So, Matt, we're going to just jump right into things. The first question that I have for you is kind of a part of the conversation warm-up is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual that you like to stick to on most mornings?
My morning routine typically involves, when I first wake up, doing 5 to 10 minutes of yoga flow. It usually just helps me kind of open up, focusing on my breathing, from working out and all that stuff. Just having a little bit of opportunity to stretch and whatnot is super important to my routine. Aside from that, then I usually do a little bit of 10, 15 minutes of reading about current events or just something to digest and get my morning started. And then one other ritual that I have in the morning is I always start with a smoothie.
Cool.
And it's usually just like fruit and vegetables, that type of stuff.
Okay.
My morning typically, I usually don't eat a ton until lunchtime. Usually most of the morning I spend, eating fruit and vegetables, that type of stuff. Right. So after that, then I usually blow up my meal, but it's usually starting that way. So
cool.
Those are the three main things that I typically do, and it certainly ebbs and flows with the craziness of life and schedules and whatnot.
Absolutely. So I want to touch on a little bit more in depth the 5 to 10 minutes of yoga flow that you do kind of to start your day. When did you kind of start incorporating that, and then what value or importance have you found for yourself personally in that yoga flow?
I started yoga years ago with my wife.
Okay.
And it was something that we would do together as aside from running or some other fitness things that we do. And what I've learned over the last several years is fitness doesn't have to be this huge, big ritual, right? It can be just something really, easy that you do in between a meeting or just to get your day started. And so for me, it's just a way to like I mentioned before, go through my breathing and to wake up and just stretch and it's only honestly something I've only started doing in the last, probably few months.
Okay.
And I've been in this men's leadership group that one of your other guests, Taylor Leary, has been a part of. And, we have kind of a daily challenge as it relates to different areas of our body.
Cool.
Body being balanced in business. And so one of the things that I've incorporated recently has been this yoga thing, just to again, kick my day off, right? I usually do most of my workouts later in the day.
Okay.
I feel like I'm really sharp mentally in the morning, and that's why I like to get a lot of my work done for my business. But it's just something to be consistent, and so that's kind of been the genesis of that, and the consistency around that was in that leadership group.
Awesome. I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that, Matt. So the second question that I have for you is, and kind of as we discussed before we turned on the mic here, if you have more than one, please feel free to share. But do you have a favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
I think about a lot of your guests, I'm a junkie for personal development and growth and love learning. The book that I've listened to over and over is Living with a Seal.
Yep.
Have you listened?
I haven't listened to it or read it, but I know it's David Goggins, and then I think it's the guy that owns the Atlanta Hawks. Right?
Yeah, his name is Jesse Itzler.
There we go. Yep.
And I know you've referenced Goggins before on the podcast.
Yeah.
You being a fitness guy, I'm sure you see his stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, it's intense, man.
And so this book, and I would encourage you. I listen to a lot of my books as opposed to reading them. Things that I read are typically for my career, but books I listen to for pleasure and personal development are usually on Audible. And Living with a Seal, again, I encourage you to listen to this one because it is absolutely hilarious. I'm literally I'll be driving on I-25 and in tears laughing, and it is so funny. So highly, highly recommend it for everybody. And basically what it is this guy named Jesse Itzler. He was a former rapper. He was a co-founder of Marquis Jet, which he sold to Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett's company. And so he's super successful in his own right. And he also married a lady named, or the founder of Spanx, Sarah Blakely.
Yep.
And so just like the quintessential power couple. And he got this idea of he wanted to, he was doing I think a 24-hour race in San Diego. and it was a team race, at least for his group it was.
Right, yeah.
And when he got there, he saw this one guy. He was sitting on a metal chair by himself, eating crackers and having a water.
Yeah.
And they were in the middle of this 24-hour like distance run. And this guy was doing it by himself, while Jesse had a team. It was like catered. It was this huge production. And he's like, this guy is a monster. And so he ended up cold calling him afterwards.
Yep.
And ended up like just asking this guy, would you come train me in my Manhattan apartment for a month? And reluctantly, he said yes. And basically what Jesse does in this book is he chronicles, the workouts and the experiences and stuff that he had throughout this. And it's phenomenal. There was a couple I can share if you want, a couple key takeaways.
Go for it, please. That'd be great.
And I think I alluded this already, was just like rethinking your workouts in the sense of, I feel like I used to have to go to the gym and it would be like a 45 minute to 2 hour like production, and it would just take forever. And now, getting in 5 or 10 minutes of push-ups or pull-ups or squats or something throughout the day can make a really profound impact.
Absolutely.
On your health and your fitness. And to your point about what you do with your work and what you want to do with the school, like just getting people to move is really critical.
Absolutely.
And so the one example that Jesse gives in the book is how they were in the middle of a board meeting, and he brought this guy David, the SEAL, with him everywhere. And they took a 15-minute break, and everyone else left the room, and David and Jesse are in the room, and Goggins goes, burpee test. I'm leaving out an expletive here.
Yeah, of course. With David Goggins, you're gonna have to leave out a lot, but
it's
that's
like
good.
Every other word.
Yeah, for sure.
And so basically, he made him do 100 burpees in between this board meeting. He strips down to his boxers.
Yeah.
And he's doing this and comes back soaking wet. So, I do that now throughout the day.
Cool.
Those types of things. So, really fascinating book. And then one other. Again, for me, one of the big things that I've worked on most in the last year, 2 years, has been my relationship with my wife. Excuse me. And there's a book called Mating in Captivity, and it's this lady she's a therapist named Esther Perel, Esther, and her last name is Perel, Perel, and you can YouTube her or find her on TED Talk. She's amazing, and she just talks about the challenges of being in a relationship in today's society, and partner, you have to be so many things to your partner, and they you expect perfection from them, and that those things are going to be a parent, a financial partner, an intellectual equal, your best friend, your intimate lover, and you can't be the best at all of those things, but that's what our society expects. And so she really dives into how to navigate that, how to balance intimacy and passion, adventure and security. These things are typically diametrically opposed. And it is, for any of you that are married or in long-term committed relationships, highly, highly encourage you to check her out, either through her book, Mating in Captivity, or through her YouTube and TED Talk type stuff. She has a podcast as well now.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. When you're saying check out YouTube and all, I'm going straight to the podcast app, because I'm sure she's probably been a guest and probably has her own for sure. Yeah, that's cool. So Matt, I wanna just go a little bit deeper with the mating in captivity and just the whole relationship thing, because anytime, and like you said, you've told me that you've listened to quite a few of my episodes, so you've probably heard me with a guest that's married, has kids. I always want to give them at some point during our podcast conversation the opportunity to talk about the importance of their significant other and their kids. So since we're kind of already there, what's kind of been one really and if you want to share more than one, please feel free to do so. But what's maybe been one really valuable lesson that you've taken away specifically from that Mating in Captivity book that's really been, profound in helping you and your wife flourish in your guys' relationship?
Yeah. Just a little context. I've been with my wife Megan for 12 years.
Okay.
We met at work. We've been married for just over 6 years. We
okay.
Our sixth anniversary.
Awesome.
And, relationships are super difficult. And I think for so long, Megan and I are both incredibly career focused. And we love our freedom and autonomy and those types of things. And I think over time, we almost start taking each other for granted. got to the point where we kind of drifted apart. And it wasn't necessarily that it wasn't anything intentional. It was just the fact that we weren't intentional is what caused it. And so what Esther talks about in her book, one of the key things was she poses the question, why do people stop creatively pursuing their spouse? And like when I first started dating Megan, I would do anything for her. Like I would have driven to Alaska to make her happy. I would take off work. I would plan special things, and for whatever reason, I stopped doing that with her, and vice versa. She didn't do those things with me either, and it was just this spot where we took each other for granted, and we were still focused on other things. And so Esther talks a lot about how she's probably in her mid-50s, and she's like, I've been married 3 times, but to the same person. And she's like, and not that they got divorced, but she's like, it is totally natural for people to fall in and out of love with each other. And she's like, my husband and I have been together for most of our lives, and there are 3 phases in our lives where we fell out of love, but you have to be very intentional about finding ways to reconnect and grow through that stuff, because no matter what, we're humans, right? We change constantly. We're learning, we're growing in different ways, and finding a way to get back together was really critical. And I can tell you one of my mantras, which maybe we'll talk about later, is like, I believe that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships, and to me, there's none more important than that with your spouse. And I can tell you when she and I were struggling at times, like, it was the worst I felt in my life, right? Like I didn't care about work. I didn't care about anything else. I was just so focused on like how rough that was and how I needed to find a way to make that better. And you even hear like someone like Steve Jobs, who talks about on his like deathbed speech, he's like, who cares about all the money and material things? He's like, treasure your family, treasure your spouse, and treasure your friends. Like that's what really matters. And I don't know why I took it for granted, or either of us did, but I can tell you right now that our relationship is the best it's ever been, and I could be more grateful for her and for our commitment to growing and getting better in that sense. So that was maybe a lot of context.
No, that's good, man. I appreciate just being open and sharing that, because that's like, that's my heart and my goal with the podcast, is that people just share their story. And that's the thing, like we're all professionals. We've all, got the social media, we got all kind of this outer look or whatever, but no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter what your profession is, we're all human beings and we all have struggles. We're all imperfect beings. Amen. And if we just come together and realize like, hey, you don't have it figured out, I don't have it figured out, you've got strengths, I've got strengths, there's weaknesses, all this type of stuff, and we just come together and we're willing to be vulnerable and share, there's a lot of power in that openness as human beings. Because a lot of us, especially I think us guys, we like to hold our feelings and our emotions in. We like to try to, put on this tough outer shell, and, we've got the money, we got the car, we got the girl, we got the house, all this. But like you just said it in reference to Steve Jobs, at the end of the day, we're all born, we all live, and we're all gonna die. And so it's like there's a lot more to life than the materialistic and trying to gain all this worldly stuff. Because the truth is, when we die, none of that worldly stuff, none of that materialistic stuff, Matt, is going to go with us into the grave. Yeah. So, how are we showing up every day in regards to, the people that are around us, intimate relationships, if we have kids, things like that. It's just, there's a lot more to it than just kind of what we see with the eye and what we see on social media. So.
Oh man, I couldn't agree more. And what's amazing is like what I value most about who I am is that I take my relationships very seriously.
Yes.
And the one that mattered the most, I kind of pushed to the back burner. And I think part of it too is like life gets complex.
Absolutely.
And like, I think for us, like we, when we kind of started going, like diverting a little bit was, we had a litter of puppies. I was only a couple years into my new career. We had just bought a new house and we're renovating it. She had just started a new job. It's like all these things like just worked to like to push us apart.
Yeah.
And I'm such a big proponent now of like trying to be like simplicity is so important. It allows you to really focus on what's important in life, and that doesn't need to be for your listeners and for you. It doesn't have to be relationship with your spouse. It could be something totally different.
For sure.
And there's seasons of life that maybe you got to focus on building your business or your school or your podcast, or it's your relationship with your kids. But, But I don't know. But it was just amazing. Like I to me, relationships are so important, and I neglected the one that was the most important.
Yeah. Was the whole experience with your wife, you know, just kind of when you kind of just you, like not you and her like discussing things, but just kind of when you, Matt, kind of had that revelation of like, man, like this isn't what it used to be, and you know, there's a disconnect, there's stuff going on here. Was this whole experience or this kind of like enlightenment of kind of like, you know, I've grown apart with my wife, was that a pretty humbling experience for you?
Yeah, man, we both realized that we were surviving and not thriving in our relationship, and we know we're capable of so much more.
Yeah.
And it was, like I think I mentioned earlier, Quentin, it was the most difficult time of my life. And nothing, like, thankfully, nothing like horrible happened. Like there wasn't any, you know, anything, like it was just like a matter of just realizing that we aren't, you know, serving each other in the way that we can. And, you know, we would just be short with each other, and we wouldn't, like, you know, we would just put our defenses. I would, you know, to your point about vulnerability, like I would just shut down. There's you know, mechanism like called stonewalling, where you just like don't share, and you just kind of go away, and it just festers and festers. And then I was just like kind of, I don't want to say I was a jerk to her, but I was just like, I wasn't fun. I wasn't like adventurous or curious in our relationship anymore. And so it was brutal. It was the most, and that's why I said earlier, I think the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your relationships. Because if that's not healthy, then everything else is going to be miserable too. So I don't know if I answered your question.
It does, and I just want to ask you one more question in regards to this, and then we'll move on. But so what, as you guys, your relationship with your wife is you just said earlier, the best it's ever been, and it's flourishing now and thriving. What would you say, just the one thing, if there's one thing for the listener, because there's going to be listeners that, you know, they're already within, you know, the first 5 to 10 minutes of our conversation, they're like, man, like I'm right where Matt was with his wife, or, you know, the female's like, hey, that's my husband or whatever. So there's already people that are already kind of like relating and connecting with you in this conversation, because again, we're all struggling. But for the listeners out there, Matt, what would be one actionable step that you would encourage them to take with their significant other, with their spouse, if they are in a place of struggle right now?
I think there's several, but communication is probably the best one. And for me, it was learning to be more vulnerable. And I know this is kind of like a very cliche thing in our world now. Is like vulnerability is preached everywhere,
right?
But it's there's so much merit to it, and creating a space where you can talk about your relationship and share. Because ultimately, pain shared is pain divided. That's what one of the things I've learned from our leadership coach. And when you share, like when she tells me that she's frustrated with me by something, like I genuinely want to like change and be better for her. And like, but if I don't know that she's upset with me about something, it just builds. And an example would be of how people go about this is in Jesse Itzler wrote another book called Living with the Monks. And the biggest takeaway I had from that book was when he was at the monastery. It was a Christian monastery in upstate New York, and every Friday the monks would meet and they would air out their grievances with each other. So they would create this space where they could talk about frustrations they've had with another person, or the businesses they were running, or whatever. And I think creating a space like that with your spouse or significant other or a family member is really critical. And that's something that Megan and I never did. And now we've created this, you know, I can tell when she's upset. Like we know when we're setting each other off, and now we have given each other the permission to ask, like, what can we do to, like, what did I do that pissed you off? Like, tell me, like, because I don't want to keep pissing you off. I want us to be happy. And we've gone through this program called Get the Love You Want, and that created this opportunity for us to share and talk about our past experiences growing up with our family and that stuff. And so I just encourage the listeners to find a way to communicate. And for us, it was going through a program and just going through creating a space where we could be vulnerable and share that stuff.
Cool. And thank you again, Matt, for just being open and sharing some of that stuff, because I know, it's a podcast, and like there's going to be people listening, and you don't know who's going to listen, but again, that's the power in human beings sharing their stories, that somebody's going to be able to relate to this. A lot of people are going to be relate to it, and people are going to be positively impacted. So thanks for sharing that and being super open. You're very welcome. So you've kind of already mentioned a couple of quotes, mantras. If you want to maybe reshare them, that would be great. Maybe if there's another one that's been impactful, that would be cool. But just what's that favorite quote or mantra for you, Matt?
My favorite one comes from Jim Carrey, of all people.
Cool.
And I think it was from a speech he gave, or a commencement address, and it says, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency that you have. And I think anytime you have an interaction with someone, you have the opportunity to create a positive, memorable experience and maybe make their life better or whatnot, or you have the ability to, take the opposite approach. And I think just recognizing that, again, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency you have. And whether you're in business or whether you're, in your in your personal relationships with family, friends, like that is so critical. You get the best out of people when they feel good about you. And I write a lot of like thank you notes or just notes to people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I always write that on the note. That's like my kind of favorite thing. Like the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency you have.
Cool.
So thanks for asking.
Yeah, for sure. So the last question as part of the conversational warm-up here, Matt, is do you have a favorite or most listened to podcast? And once again, if there's more than one, please feel free to share.
My favorites are Tim Ferriss.
Okay, yep.
As he mentions, he has these wide-ranging conversations with people from all backgrounds, and he goes super deep. He goes, and these are the most influential people in the world. And so getting to hear from them is really incredible. Another one for people who are maybe interested in investing or whatnot is one called the Investors Podcast. Guy named Preston Pish and then Stig Brodersen. He's out of Denmark, but they do a good job of talking about like financial literacy and value investing, and they do a lot of like studying billionaires. They're an amazing podcast, and they're actually starting some branches of that to have a little bit more focus on different areas of investing. And the last one is Tony Robbins. As we mentioned earlier, I know it's important to you, Quinn, like this whole personal development thing. He's got everything from fitness to health to your relationships to, you name it.
Yep, for sure.
So those are the three that I listen to the most, and it's hard because there's so much good content out there, and you're doing this too through some of the listeners on your podcast. But those are the three that I've identified with the most the last several years.
Perfect. Now, I was actually just listening to the Tony Robbins podcast last night, and he was interviewing and having a conversation with one of the co-founders of Airbnb, and it was just an amazing, powerful conversation. It wasn't really even a conversation. It was the co-founder of Airbnb was at some sort of a conference setting. He was more just kind of sharing his story. I think Tony might have asked a question or two, but it was so cool. And I haven't dug into Tony Robbins a lot just because he's got so many quote unquote disciples, so I kind of like once I started listening to Tony Robbins and listen to his podcast and some of his podcasts that he's been a guest on, I'm like, I've heard that before from this person or that person. But I'm starting to listen to a little bit more because I'm so intrigued and fascinated by like you've been talking about, Matt, like the personal growth and just how we speak and just these conditioned beliefs that we all have from birth and things like that. So just in regards to Tony, what's one of those things that you really appreciate about him, and one of those things that you've really taken away from him and been able to powerfully apply that to your life?
I mean, I love his a couple of things. I love his frankness with people. He's not afraid to tell them that you're full of shit.
Yeah, for sure.
Excuse my French.
No, you're good, man.
He calls it how it is.
Absolutely.
But I love his the human connection he has with people. Like, he has this unique ability to make every person that he's around feel like they're the most important person in the world in that moment. And there's only a handful of people, I think, in our world that have that capacity, especially for people that are meeting millions of people.
Absolutely.
For me, one of my other heroes is Arnold Palmer, and he was the same way. Like, he made that person feel like they were the most special person in the world at that moment. And this is a guy who whether you're Tony Robbins or Arnold Palmer, like, they're pulled in so many different directions. And
right.
It takes so much energy to be able to give that to people, and I admire him so much for that ability. I try to, mimic that in the little bit that I, do. So that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to, before we kind of get into your backstory and stuff, I want to kind of hit on and talk a little bit more about, because that's really just the first 25 minutes of our conversation. It's all been basically about human interaction, whether that's with your wife or just with people out in the world, generally speaking. And obviously, with you being a financial advisor and you're meeting with clients, you're interacting with people every day, it's, just kind of how you show up, how you speak and things like that, Matt, is very, very important. But just because, I like to say, because I've observed this, in my life, that, because of social media, we are more connected than ever before in human history. But also, as you dig into statistics and you look at our culture here in the United States and worldwide, suicide is like the highest it's ever been. Depression, divorce, all these negative things are like, just skyrocketing, and the issues with youth and kids and things like that. So I see how we're more connected than ever, Matt, because of social media, but also we are more disconnected than ever in human history because of social media. And that comes from our human interaction. A lot of it, especially with the younger kids, is coming through a screen. There isn't that eye contact. There isn't that human element of just like, the body language and things like that. And that's why, it was very important to me when I started my podcast that it's like, hey, I will show up and I'm going to have a conversation with my guest face to face. And I have found so much power and value for myself personally in having that human interaction and connection with my podcast guests. And there's a lot of other positives that have come from it. So just for you personally, how important is it for you, Matt, to continue to grow in regards to your ability to connect with humans, to make them feel comfortable around you, to really bring that positivity into their lives?
I got goosebumps hearing you say that, Quentin. Like, seriously, that is what drives me probably more than anything.
Right.
Is that, excuse me, I believe that aside from your health, your social capital is the most important thing that you have. And you have to see people in person and feel their energy and share that. You don't do that over a Skype call, right, or whatever. I love that interaction. But there's so many studies that talk about how your relationships also impact your health. And this is partially a fitness podcast in a sense. At least that's one of the ties that bind everyone related to this. And there was a study, I'm sure some of you listeners have listened. There's a YouTube or a TED Talk about it's the longest study on happiness or whatnot, and it started in the 1930s, and they started by studying 268 Harvard sophomores. And what they've done is over their life, they would do interview questions and check their health and just throughout the last 90 some years, 100 years almost. And what they found was that the people that were the most satisfied in their relationships when they were in their 50s were also the healthiest in their 80s. It didn't have anything to do with their blood pressure or their weight or any of that stuff. Well, that's all important. It had more to do with what type of relationships did you have with familial relationships, friends, whether they're clients, whatever it might be. And that's what truly led to their health. And this study is still ongoing, and there will probably be some even more profound things that come from it. But I think the human connection thing is so important. And I'm thankfully been on the board of a nonprofit called Project Helping. And we're a mental wellness organization that a good friend of mine started 6-7 years ago. And I couldn't agree more, man. I about the whole mental health and depression, and I agree that a lot of it just stems from people being so disconnected. And I think a lot of people are just shy, and it's hard for them to get out of their comfort zone. And I personally was super shy when I was a kid. That was a big challenge for me. And even to this day, I love like small groups, but getting out and meeting new people like in a big group can be really tough for me.
Yeah. So how do you force yourself, push yourself, get yourself to, get connected with like a men's group or get connected with a group of high level performers? How do you get yourself to be more sociable in those bigger settings where you just admitted that it is uncomfortable for you? Is it something where it's just like, hey, like your self-talk is like, all right, Matt, like you don't like doing this, so you need to do it, and I'm going to do it. Is that kind of like the simplicity of it, or is there something else behind that?
That's a good question. My experience has been that I'll go to maybe, like, for instance, I went to something for Denver Startup Week a couple weeks ago, and I didn't really know who was going to be there. And I had this kind of like nervous anxiety. I'm like, I'm going to go there. I'm not going to know anyone. I'm going to be like walking around by myself, and I'm going to be that kind of loser in the corner.
Yeah.
And I have that experience a lot when I go to these like bigger events, unless I know I'm going with somebody. And but once I get there, I usually run into someone I know, or I get to somehow bump into somebody, then start a conversation with them. And every time, I can't think of a time where I haven't come out of that and been grateful for the experience. And I have to just remind myself of that, of like, you know what, I'm going to most likely have the ability to connect with someone new or reconnect with someone that I care about. And that helps me overcome it. I mean, you still, just like anything, whether it's a workout, it's just like going to the gym. Like the first month of getting to go to the gym after you haven't gone for a while can be really difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
After you kind of start building that muscle, so to speak, it becomes a little bit easier. And nothing's worth doing that isn't difficult.
Right.
But for your listeners who maybe are shy, like find a friend to go to an event, or find a way to make it a little bit more palatable and less scary or intimidating or whatnot.
Yeah.
Reach out to me. I'll try to help in some capacity, or introduce you to some other people that have that same mindset around connecting with people and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I learned that at a young age. Like I remember when I was a kid, or when I was in college, I'm a former golf pro, not the guy that you'd see on TV playing for millions of dollars, unfortunately, but I was a club pro at a couple of different country clubs around Denver. But I remember when I had to do an internship every year during school. It was a requirement for my major.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that I grew up with, he was several years older than me, but he ended up becoming an assistant golf pro and now the head golf pro at Augusta National.
Wow,
which,
cool.
For people who don't know about golf, this is the pinnacle of golf clubs in the world.
Yep, for sure.
And my mom's like, you should call JJ and ask him for an internship. And I had this like attitude, like one, I was scared to do it. And I just had this attitude of, I'm going to do this on my own. And it was I'm super thankful for where my life has gone, but it was such a horrible mindset that the power, like there's so much, power in your network and who you're able to surround yourself with. And I didn't, so what I'm trying to say by all this is that if this isn't a strength of yours, this is something that can be learned.
Absolutely.
Like I didn't know this at a young age, and I was horrible at it, but it's something that over time I've developed a skill set, just because it's almost out of necessity for my new career.
For sure.
But anyway, that was maybe a long way of going about that.
No, it's perfect. It's beautiful. And also it's just like anything else in life, Matt. The more you do something, the more than likely the better you're going to get at it. So it's like, for me, it's like I can carry on a conversation. I can interact with people. I can, all this different stuff. But I always, kind of similar to you, I like more the one-on-one connection. And when we get into bigger groups, there's a little bit more anxiety for me. And, there's just the different dynamics. But, and like, again, like I can always talk to people and things like that. But it wasn't really until I started the podcast and really started to step into other people's lives and just, have that eye-to-eye contact, really really have that real human connection past like, oh, how's the weather, or how's your job, or how's the sports team, and all that kind of that surface level stuff, which I absolutely despise and dislike and hate. Once I really started stepping into people's lives, and they got to have that platform through the podcast to share their lives with me and my listeners and things like that, I began to realize how much I really enjoyed and appreciated that human connection and really going deep, getting past all the surface level stuff and having my guests open up and share about a rough time with their spouse, a rough time with a family member, or a bad business decision, what have you. And I'm just like, man, like the podcast thing and this human connection and having deep intellectual stimulating conversation, it's really, I found, what really lights me up, and it sets my soul on fire. So I've learned it, and the more I step into that and force myself to step into those relationships and things like that, it's just like you get better at that communication, you get better at listening, you get better at asking questions. It just becomes a powerful part of your life. And one of the quotes that I hear all the time, it's very cliche, but a lot of times things are cliche because there's power in it, and it's true, is that your net worth is your network. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, or your network is your net worth, and it's like I'm experiencing that right now in my life because I'm going through some different things in my life with the career and stuff like that. And it's like I had a meeting with a former podcast guest up here in Denver on Friday, and she really had some value to add to my life. And it's like, hey man, like your network, the people that you connect with, like it's just a very important part of life. So I want to discuss a little bit about self-talk, because I'm a firm believer, Matt, that how I talk to myself, how you talk to yourself, how human beings talk to themselves, like that inner self-talk, that's how we are going to show up in life. And so kind of where are you at with self-talk? Or is there maybe like a quote, a mantra, a word that you kind of like try to hold on to throughout your day? What does that self-talk look like for you so that you can show up to be the best version of yourself for your clients, for your wife, just life in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something that's evolving for me, and I still struggle with at times. I think the times that have the most self-talk is when I'm really self-absorbed and I'm not focusing on others.
Okay.
And it's when I'm in my own head and I am not taking this servant leadership mindset, which is a core value of mine. And I find that if I'm stressed about work or stressed about my relationship or something, it's usually because I'm by myself and I haven't made the time to connect with another human. And when I love Monday mornings because I know like the anxiety of the weekend for me kind of is gone. Now I'm out and I'm hustling, I'm out meeting people, and I get to communicate. So I find that what helps me mitigate the self-talk is when I can interact with another person. And it allows me to hopefully curiously listen so that I can then compassionately serve.
Right.
And so I go through it. I struggle with it. I try to, flip it on its head and be positive. For sure. But that's really hard when you're, what helps me be most positive is when I can be around another human.
Yes, perfect.
And I think this kind of comes full circle to what we talked about already, Quinn. It was like, the importance of being around other great people.
Yeah.
And they're going to inspire you. They're going to be there to listen to you. You're going to learn something from them. So that's what's helped me navigate it, and hopefully it'll help another listener navigate that, is just go surround yourself with other great people that you care about in your life.
Perfect. Okay, so Matt, let's I want to dig into kind of like your upbringing a little bit here, and then we'll kind of move kind of to where you're at today and things like that. But if you don't mind sharing with myself and the listeners, Matt, where did you grow up, and kind of what did those earlier years look like? Were you involved in sports? I'm sure you probably were. If you were a golf pro at one point, and then maybe some other extracurricular activities. But what did those earlier years look like? Maybe is there a takeaway or two from your upbringing, if you don't mind sharing?
Love to. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I grew up in a really rural town, about an hour and a half west of Philadelphia.
Okay.
I had the most idyllic childhood you could ask for. Like I pinched myself, and when I think back how fortunate I was to have like the most amazing parents who were selfless, who sacrificed so much for me and for my I have two brothers and a sister. I'm the oldest, and what they did for me was incredible. So we had, grew up in a really rural area. We spent a ton of time outside, biking and hiking and fishing and, like building forts and just doing stupid stuff that kids when you're young do. And I mean, I think I probably have a new bruise on my arm or legs or something every day.
Yeah.
We would also cause a little trouble.
Yep.
Stealing the golf carts at the local golf course. And, we would always return them, but we had a little joyride. It couldn't have been any better, honestly. The challenge, I guess, was my parents did get divorced when I was in junior high, and that was a little bit of a challenging experience. Although I admire my parents so much for what they did, they ended up only moving about half a mile apart on purpose.
Okay.
So we could walk back and forth to our parents' house. My dad, after my parents got divorced, would still come over for dinner. Like he'd come over for holidays. Like my parents were amazing, and I like looking back and thinking how difficult that would, like when I was going through the tough time with Megan, I'm like, I can't imagine how difficult it was for my parents, and they had 4 kids.
Right.
Like it is mind-boggling what they did, and they both had careers, and so, but that really shaped me. I ended up having, I now have basically 2 great dads and 2 great moms because my parents have been remarried, and I got to learn so much from them. But I really learned is like how to handle yourself, and you can take a really negative situation and turn it into something really positive.
Absolutely.
And that's what my parents did, Quentin. Like and my step parents were amazingly selfless and understood the dynamic so well. And we just got super fortunate. But I think, their mindset and their positivity is what helped kind of navigate that. So, from a childhood perspective, that was maybe the biggest hardship, I guess. I think one other learning was that, I was pretty sheltered as a kid. Like, I grew up in a small town. We wasn't exposed to a lot of stuff. Honestly, I wasn't exposed to a lot of failure, and I think that's a huge mistake. And not my parents. I think parents they try to like protect you from those
Absolutely,
things. It's a natural thing
for sure.
And but I think failure is a really important thing to growth. I think both the best lessons I've learned in life have come from mistakes that I made,
Absolutely,
with Megan or whatnot. So all in all, like I've got knock on wood, I got the best family there is, and super grateful for what they've done, and we're all still really close now.
Awesome.
Which is a blessing.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate. I grew up in a town of 5,000 people in Iowa, and amazing parents and very overall sheltered, and just, kind of growing up in a very conservative home and going to church and things like that. And definitely, through sport, I experienced failure, but just, pretty idyllic, just like you mentioned. But now in regards to athletics, extracurricular activities, as you kind of started going to school, junior high, high school, was that a really big part of your upbringing as well, Matt?
Huge, yeah. I love adventure. I love activity, and that's what, gets me excited. Like adventure is a core value of mine. And so, we would do, sports were, I played a lot of soccer as a kid, basketball, golf. We would, do a lot of hiking together, just anything outdoors, hunting with my dad, all kinds of stuff. And then also travel too was a big part of it. We never went on any like real elaborate trips, but just like part of what brought me to Colorado was when I was a kid, my parents took us out here to visit.
Yep.
And I think like most people from places like Iowa and Pennsylvania, like, oh my gosh, this is like heaven on earth.
Yeah, for sure.
So those things really shaped my childhood too.
Okay, cool.
Working in the golf business, I did some I took a couple of courses on golf fitness classes, and what they talked about a lot was, nowadays I feel like when you play a sport, it's year round, and that's
Yep.
all you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what we learned from this class was like the importance of developing fundamental movement skills. Probably a lot of stuff that you're going to be doing with your school is
Right,
like,
right.
and that involved doing a lot of different sports or a lot of different activities when you're young. Everything from gymnastics to whether it's basketball or sports or whatever it might have been. But that really helped you have this foundation to then allow you to then, when you're in high school or college, to focus on one sport and potentially really excel.
Right.
Certainly there are some athletic things like gymnastics or whatnot where you excel at a really young age, especially particularly for women. But for the most part, having this foundation of lots of different activities helped people flourish more as they were older.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was fortunate to have that experience as a kid to do lots of different things.
Cool. Okay, so let's kind of just start discussing post high school. Again, if you don't mind sharing, Matt, where did you go to college? What did you study? Did the major and things like that change at some point? What were those college years like for you?
One of the best decisions I ever made was to go away to college.
Okay.
So I went to a university called Coastal Carolina.
Yep, heard of it.
A small school just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And when I was a kid, we would go there for golf vacations.
Okay, cool.
It was within driving distance, and it was just a golf mecca for especially on the East Coast anyway.
Yeah.
And I had the choice. I didn't grow up in a small town. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't know what an economy was. I didn't know what business was. I had no idea. And you come to Colorado, and you're like, oh my gosh, you got oil and gas and finance and all these tech, all these different things.
For sure.
But I didn't know. And so what I did know was that I love golf. Golf is my passion. It still is. So I was like, maybe I'll make a career out of that. And so there were a handful of schools in the country, Quentin, that offered what's called a professional golf management program.
Okay.
UCCS is one of the schools now that offers it.
Oh, cool. Okay.
In Springs. At the time, there were maybe 10. Penn State was one of them, which was 3 hours from my house. Coastal Carolina, a couple schools else around the country. I'm like, well, I'm either going to go to Penn State or Coastal Carolina.
Okay.
And my mom tells me, she's like, Matt, you change your mind every single day. because I was this shy kid, little town, super sheltered. Going 600 miles away to school was terrifying for me. But I'll tell you, it was the best decision I ever made. Like, it helped me become the person I am today, and I don't think I would have had that had I stayed or to the same level.
Right.
So I studied, got a bachelor's degree in marketing, and then basically what it was is the university has a relationship with the PGA of America, Professional Golf Association of America, where you do some additional self-study stuff and courses and whatnot, in addition to some curriculum that the school offers. So it's basically getting a double major. And part of the other reason I chose Coastal over Penn State was Coastal, their golf program was in their business school.
Oh, wow.
Whereas Penn State was in their what's called the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay, interesting.
So, I was so naive. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And but it was a really good path for me from that perspective. College was a great. I made a big mistake in college in the sense that I didn't take advantage of my time there like I should have.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to 2 schools. Played a year of football at a D3 school in Iowa, Central College, and then I quit football and I transferred up to the University of Sioux Falls in South Dakota. And I look back on those 4 years of college, and there's mixed feelings, and I'm not going to get into it because it's not about me. But I exactly can relate to what you just said. I could have taken a lot more advantage of those 4 years, the connecting with people, because I just kind of did my own thing. I was into the lifting weights, bodybuilding, and just being, I partied, and I was just a knucklehead. I just straight up was, for most of those 4 years. But the same thing with you, Matt, is like I came from a small town, and after I quit football, like sports was my God. That was everything. I had the camaraderie in the locker room and all that stuff. And my darkest years were the year and the couple years after I quit football, because I didn't have anything. Football, sports was my foundation, was my everything. And when that was gone, you're anytime you leave like a church, or you leave a business, or you leave a team of some sort, a lot of times you're on the outside now looking in, and people, don't really connect with you anymore. They don't communicate with you anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I can relate. Like I just kind of look back like, man, I wish I would have had the mindset that I do now in college, because I there are great opportunities to build an amazing human connection and network through college, and I didn't take advantage of that. So was that kind of your same experience then?
100%.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I never went and saw professors during their office
Right.
hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never got involved in like, extracurricular like student body or
Yeah.
like
Me neither. Yeah.
like, I had my little clique of friends.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like so disappointing looking back that I had this amazing opportunity and I did not take advantage of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But from your greatest mistakes come those lessons.
For
that
sure.
now,
Absolutely.
and that's a big influence in my life now is to like take advantage of those opportunities.
Yes.
And sounds like it's been the same for
Mm-hmm.
the same
For
for
sure.
you, Quentin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I had a great experience at college, but I could have made it more rich.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I just didn't. Who knows where my life would have gone from it? Again, I'm super grateful for where I am.
Yeah.
But it all happens for a reason, and you learn from it.
For sure. For sure. So I want to talk about let's talk about golf. I mean, you just mentioned earlier it's a passion of yours. You in the introduction, I said you're a former golf pro. So when did you, and it sounds like when you were younger, maybe you started golfing, but kind of where did golf come on the scene? Was it something that your dad did or your mom did or your family was kind of already involved in, and then you kind of picked it up that way? And then just kind of like share kind of that passion, like why are you passionate about golf? What are maybe some life lessons that you've learned from golf, Matt? And then just why is it something that you still continue to keep in your life as you get older?
Yeah. Golf is something that I picked up when I was young.
Okay.
I would follow
Yeah.
my dad around when I was 3 and hit a
Okay.
golf ball while he would play. It was his main hobby.
Okay.
And I didn't really start picking it up seriously until I was in high school. But at that point, like I was like I loved golf. Like I would go out. It'd be pouring down rain. I'd be out in front of our house hitting golf balls.
Yeah.
Like it was just something that I like couldn't get enough of. Probably about like it's not like you had that experience, but
Yeah.
it was. And for me, golf ended up being a great way just to. I learned so much from it in the sense that. I was a 15-year-old kid playing the club championship at the local golf course.
Yeah.
With guys who were 55 and 60. And like the lessons you learn around that, like just being around those people, it helps you, I think, mature, somewhat socially, somewhat
Absolutely.
quicker. You learn from them. You make great connections. Like some of the best relationships I have now have come from golf. And part of it is because you love it. But also like, integrity. There's a quote from Phil Anschutz, local business leader in Denver, and maybe it wasn't even from him, but I've heard it coined to him. It says, "Life is simple if you always do the right thing when no one is watching." And golf is probably the only sport where you call penalties on yourself. Most sports you're trying to like, convince the ref or someone else that it wasn't your fault. Or
Great
whatever.
point. Yeah.
And golf is one of those few things, Quentin, that integrity is at the core of it. And so learning that at a young age was really important to me, and has been foundational for my life. And so it's been really profound from that perspective. But I think the next piece is, as I got into it as a career, a lot of the golf business, because I was in the club side, like I was a teaching pro or a club pro. So I would help run golf tournaments. I'd hire staff for the golf shop. We would play. We would teach. And one of the things that I learned was it was all about like hospitality, like how the general manager of the club, one of the clubs I worked at, he had this acronym called CPME, and it stood for Create Positive, Memorable Experiences. And our goal, our job was in every interaction to create a positive, memorable experience for the people that we were working for. And it's amazing like how little things can make such a profound impact on someone's day.
Absolutely.
And so golf taught me so much about like just how to like treat people and care for them and like do everything I could to go out of my way to make their day better. And I've tried to take that mindset into the rest of my life, into my career, everything. And I'm not perfect at it. I'm far from perfect at it.
Right.
There's plenty of times where I'm upset or frustrated and I don't take the high road or I don't go that extra step.
For sure.
But it's still kind of at the core of who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect at it. So that's how golf's been golf got me to Colorado, and at least back to Colorado. And so it's been a massive part of my life.
Now, when you started, when you're out in the rain, you're 15 years old, you're hitting the golf ball and things like that. What was the and I know some of it because I experienced the same thing, as you're whatever when you're younger and you start getting involved in things. It's like whatever, and it might be even something where you don't even really like it, but if you're naturally good at it, wherever you're getting that positive reinforcement, wherever you're getting that positive encouragement from, a lot of times as kids, that's the direction we kind of go, at least up to high school and even into college, and that might even be something we pursue the rest of our lives. So I'm assuming because you were as a teenager doing a great job and excelling in golf, and you're beating these guys that are in their 40s and 50s, and there's the trophies, the medals, this positive reinforcement, encouragement. I'm sure that was some fuel to the fire. But kind of before all of that, when you're just hitting the golf balls in the rain, what was that thing that really just, when you think about it, what really pulled you into golf? Because for me personally, golf, I can't even hit the ball. It's too boring for me. I need something more physical and just kind of in your face. So what was the pull to kind of get you hooked in regards to golf?
That's a good question, Quinn. I don't know. I love team sports as well.
Yeah.
But I always found that I worked harder than most of the people on the sports. And
for sure.
Golf probably a lot lifting. Lifting I've done is it's on you. You got to show up and perform, and you take all the glory, you take all the shame.
Yeah,
so to speak,
for sure. Yeah.
But golf is such a challenge, man. It's a lot like life. It is this never-ending pursuit of perfection that you're never going to attain. You can make good decisions, and you can make good swings, but you can have outcomes that aren't good.
Right,
you
for
can
sure.
hit a shot. It's just a lot like life.
Yeah.
You can make great decisions or whatnot, and there's a disruptor in your business, in the technology, or there's an economy shift, and it just changes everything. And golf is, I think, a lot like that. I was just obsessed with it. I couldn't get enough of it. I don't know exactly why.
Yeah.
But it was something that I just knew. I just wanted to get better at. I would get up early and put a flashlight on the putting green and go putt before I go to school. I hit balls in the rain, and I don't know what it is, and I think that's why it led me down as a career.
Yeah.
But following my passion wasn't necessarily a great career, and I think that's an important lesson for people too. It's I think you get a lot of career advice follow your passion, and I think that can be helpful in some ways, but it wasn't for me. I think doing what you love is important, but you have to know that not every day is going to be perfect.
For sure.
Even doing what you love sucks at times. When you're doing your 30th, squat, or your clean, or whatever you're doing, you're why am I doing this to myself?
For sure, yeah. That's a great point. And that's it's just fascinating to me, to see kind of the why, or try to figure out the why in my own personal life. It's why? Because I was the same way growing up, Matt. I was super driven, and I knew I wasn't the most talented. I wasn't the most gifted in anything, but I knew in regards to athletics, because that's all I really cared about. I mean, I could have applied it to school, but I didn't really care about school. But it's I knew if I worked harder than everybody, I would at least be able to hang. You know what I mean? And so I would get up at middle school, 4:45 in the morning. I go running. I used to shoot. I used to just have a huge passion for basketball. So there was probably a 2-year period where I'd have to make 100 baskets, so 100 made shots every single day. I mean, in Iowa, dude, it's -20. My mom would get in her overalls. She'd have a ski mask on. She'd come out and be my rebounder, and it's but it's just what's that?
Who taught you that?
That's the thing. That's the question. Just like I asked you, it's what hooked you? What pulled you into golf? And it's my dad played tennis and racquetball and stuff when he was younger, and ping pong. He wasn't a football player. He wasn't a basketball player. One of my grandpas, he played a little basketball. One of my grandmas, she played some basketball. We're talking way back in the day. But there wasn't really a strong presence of athletics. When I was growing up, in regards to my parents or my family. My dad was always talking about sports. He had sports cards and collected things like that. So I was exposed to that, but I don't know. That's the question. That's the fascinating thing is like, what, as kids, like, how do we get pulled into sports? How do we get pulled into certain activities and like, what's that driving force? And I think a lot of the times it is a parent, but you know, that's not always the case. So it's just interesting. That's why I asked you that question. And it's like, for me, it's like, why did I wake up when I was 12 years old at 4:45 every morning, go out and run a couple miles? Then I'd have breakfast, and then my mom would drop me off at this gas station. Then I'd run more to school. But it was something where there was something inside of me that I believe I was born with, and people are born with, where it's like, there's just this insatiable like drive to just like get better and be the best and work hard. And I think a lot of it too is just, you know, when you're growing up, you're trying to fit in, right? You're trying to prove yourself, you know. So
I agree, man.
It's just interesting, and that's why I kind of asked you like kind of what hooked you, and the honest answer is like you don't really know, but it's so fascinating about human beings. Like why are we the way that we are, and why do we say what we say? Why do we do what we do? It's just fun, man. It's fun to explore that type of stuff. So okay, so let's talk about. I want to get into kind of where you're at today. I mean, you're a financial advisor. It sounds like, you know, post-college, sounds like you kind of were pursuing the golf dream and that passion. And then at some point, as you just mentioned, you kind of realize like, hey, this isn't gonna probably sustain me financially forever. So there's a career shift. So what was kind of that time frame of you realizing like, hey, like I need to figure something else out? And then how did you get into being a financial advisor? And then also, if you just kind of want to expound on kind of what is a financial advisor? What do you guys do kind of in the day to day?
Yeah. So how I got into my new career was like I worked in golf. I was at a local country club here in Denver for 6 years, and I was the what's called the head golf professional on the course in Longmont for a year.
Okay, cool.
And that Cherry Hills was the place I was at first. You know, it's the most exclusive club in Colorado. It's like just this propensity for excellence, essentially. And I had an amazing experience there. Had great mentors, great bosses, great people to work with. And then I took this job. I was kind of bored. I was ready for the next step. I took this job as the head pro of course in Longmont, and it was really rough. They just Cherry Hills is member owned, so they had this great culture around doing what's best for the membership and everybody as collectively, which can be hard when you have 1,000 different people. But,
yeah, for sure.
But I went to this place where the new mission they were now owned by a single investor, and the mission there was more to make a profit, or at least not lose money in that sense, and land bank it for something future development. And the values and everything were just completely opposite. And I was miserable, Quentin. Like, it was the worst experience of my life. I was, like, sick to my stomach to go to work after, like, the first 8-9 months there. So I ended up resigning. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, well, I can go back to school and maybe get a MBA or master's. I could find another opportunity in golf, or I could just do something else. Yeah. And I learned very experientially. And I had always been involved. Aside from golf, the thing I loved learning about the most was finance for whatever reason. And I think a lot of it came from my dad. My dad was very influential with me with golf. And his second hobby is finance. Like, he taught me at a very young age the importance of putting money in a Roth IRA and saving and living within your means. And my mom was a great steward of the little bit of money that she had as well. And so I loved studying that and learning about it. And so I'm like, well, why don't I make a career out of this? Because it's something it wasn't my passion, but I think when people ask me, like, what should I do for a career? Well, I don't know, but what do you love learning about? Because for me, like, I have this continuous desire to get better now. And that allows me to serve my clients and the people that I'm working for in a better way. So I didn't know how to get into it. So into the career. So I ended up talking to a bunch of people, and I actually was a client of the firm Northwestern Mutual that I worked for. Before I got into it, and the guys that I was with, when I lost my job, I'm like, hey, I need to make sure I can, fund my insurance policies and fund my Roth IRA and all these different things. And they're like, well, why don't you come in and talk to us? And so I went in and met with them and fell in love with the ability to, be my own boss. I mean, essentially, Northwestern is like almost like a franchise where you're your own boss. You have a lot of freedom. There's like a ton of personal development. There's a lot of learning that goes on, and I was just really drawn and attracted to that because I felt like golf, I was just like really complacent. And it's just a really crappy place to be. And I think so many people I meet in their careers, they're just like, they go through the motions. And that's what I was doing.
Right.
And it sucks. Now my job and career is like, I'm constantly learning and be in this spot where I have to push myself and want to push myself. And that gives me so much fulfillment and happiness and the capacity to, again, serve people in a different way.
For sure.
So that's been, it was brutal, man, because you start out in that business just like you start out with a school or whatever, and I didn't get a paycheck.
Right.
You got to go out and build a career.
For sure.
And build a business.
Yeah.
And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I was, I was scared, but looking back now, it was one of the best decisions. Going away to college, changing careers, no matter how hard it was totally worth doing. Mm-hmm. And there's a quote, and I think I even heard it from one of your other guests, a similar quote is, the harder the challenge, the more rewarding the triumph.
For sure.
And now I have so much freedom. I get to, I truly get to help people impact their lives in a positive way. Mm-hmm. So, and I play just as much golf, if not more golf.
There you go, man. Golf is never going to go away in regards to Matt's life. So
no. I don't know if I answered your question.
No,
that was kind of my transition.
Yeah, and then so just generally speaking, you don't have to go too in depth or in detail, but a financial advisor. I've had another financial advisor, Taylor Leary, on the podcast, and you're, as you mentioned before, connected with him through a group. Super cool, super good dude, and he kind of shared a little bit, but that was a few episodes back. So I'm sure that I've got some new listeners from that point. So in regards to being a financial advisor, what do you guys kind of do? What's kind of the goal in that game, so to speak?
Yeah, and first, Taylor's an amazing guy.
For sure.
I've been in these leadership groups with Taylor for the last 18 months, and he's got such incredible. We talked about before we started. He's got this incredible energy and passion for what he's doing. And
awesome guy.
I really relish the time with him. But for me, I think finance for people is super scary and intimidating.
Yep.
And I know you talk with Taylor. There's such a lack of financial literacy in our world, but it's just ultimately it boils down to people are busy. People are intimidated by it in a lot of ways, and it was never taught. So
for sure,
a lot of my role, and Taylor kind of alluded to this, is to be kind of a coach, right?
Yes. Okay.
And so one of a colleague of mine, we have an internal podcast within our system of about 5,000 advisors, and one of my colleagues, who I don't actually know, described it in this way. He's like, our job is to be, first of all, a guide, right? And so that guide, the job there is to help people understand what their current and future financial capacity is, right? And helping people facilitate a regular conversation around where they're at with their finances and are they living the life they want to and should be. I think it's just like my thing with Megan. We never had a conversation around the challenges we had or the frustrations we had with each other. And people so often don't talk about money. It's taboo. They don't. I was lucky my parents talked about it at the dinner table and when we were kids. It shows that, but most people don't. Yeah,
I grew up in a home where it was, my dad's a very private individual, and that it wasn't discussed.
Yeah.
So.
And it's not, it's just kind of is what it is. But anytime, just facilitating that conversation with people is usually step one, right? And getting them in a room with a husband and a wife or whoever, or a couple, and just talking about what's important to them, what they want to accomplish, etc. And then the next thing that I think that we offer as a financial advisor is the role of being a guru, in the sense that we are experts in our domain. So those are things, and this may lose some people in the sense, but we're doing things like asset allocation and proactive rebalancing and tax mitigation and asset location and strategic distribution planning and cash flow management. All these things where we're the expert that people can go do on their own, but a lot of times they're so busy and they don't want to learn about it that's why they hire someone like me.
Perfect. Okay.
Right? Because they just it's overwhelming to them. Or I get a lot of calls in the fall when people have open enrollment. And they're like, what should I do with my work benefits? What elections should I make for my 401k or my insurances or whatnot? So being the person who has the technical understanding to help people navigate the complexities of the financial system. And then the third is an advocate. They call it gladiator, because advocate doesn't start with a G. So we have guide, guru, and then gladiator or advocate. And I think of all these, this is probably the most important. In the sense that my job for the people I work for is to be an advocate for them. And not necessarily an advocate of them today, but to be an advocate of who they want to be 10, 20, and 30 years from now. And I think it's really difficult for people to experience delayed gratification, whether it's with fitness or their finances or their nutrition. All these things are really critical, and it's really easy to make a decision in the moment that is self-serving and feels good, but how does that impact me 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now?
For sure, yeah.
And part of what my job is to do is to help people experience delayed gratification, which isn't fun. It's not going out and buying the cool new Apple Watch. Right. Or it's like, no, putting some of this away so you have security and peace of mind and the ability to do that in the future.
Perfect.
And it's not easy, man. I struggle with it personally at times. My wife does, like all my clients do. It's not perfect, but my job is then to go back to being that guide and have these regular conversations so that we stay on track. You're gonna weave in and off the track, but the goal is to ultimately stay on it.
Perfect. So for our listeners, if you don't mind sharing, what would be like kind of the number one investment tip that you could share with myself and the listeners, and maybe the tip that you would share with a client that you personally have?
I mean, the number one factor in someone's financial success is their behavior. So, I mean, first and foremost is living within your means. A quick example would be, just to give people context, if someone wanted to accumulate $1 million by age 65, and they were going to save into a tax-deferred type of like an IRA or Roth or something, and they were to get an 8% return. That may be high, but we'll just use that one. If they were to start at age 25, they need to save roughly $285 a month to get to $1 million. If they wait till 35, they need to save like $650 a month. If they wait till 45, they need to save $2,500 a month. They wait till 55, they need to save $5,500 a month. So literally, if you start at age 25, over that 40 years, you'd put $140,000 away and it would grow to $1 million. If you wait till 55, you'd have to put $650,000 of your own money to get to the $1 million. So it's literally like a $500,000 difference of what your contributions were to get to the same goal. So power of compounding interest, as I think Einstein called it, the eighth wonder of the world. Like behavior, live within your means and put that away. It could be into real estate. It could be into an IRA. It could be into your business. It doesn't matter. I mean, I guess it does matter in some respect, but the main point of what I'm trying to make is to live within your means.
Perfect.
Keep it simple.
I appreciate you sharing that, Matt. So we've been going for an hour and 12 minutes, which like I looked over earlier and it was like already like an hour and a minute. I'm like, whoa, like we've been going that long already. So we're gonna start moving towards the end here. I do want to touch on kind of that third thing that was a part of your introduction, and that was social capitalist. I can probably figure out, like, take social capitalist, try to figure out kind of like in my own head with those two words, kind of like maybe a little bit of what that is, but just what is a social capitalist, and why do you consider yourself that?
Yeah, I don't know what the actual like definition would be in Webster or something.
Yeah.
But to me, it's the ability to build genuine relationships with people, then leverage those relationships to compassionately serve other people.
Right.
And I think along the way you build personal fulfillment. So social capital to me is just like having this amazing network. To your point earlier, your network is your net worth type thing.
Right.
And I see so many people who are, an example, like they want to start a new job or a new career or business, and they've been so isolated in their bubble. They haven't been out networking or meeting people or being adventurous or curious about what's going on out there, that they go to change jobs and it takes them 15 months to do so, or it takes them 2 years because they just haven't built a network in that arena.
Yeah.
And I think what's cool about what you're doing is you're building your social capital now through this ecosystem around the podcast that's going to allow you to launch your passion project. And I think so many people take that for granted. And I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I did too at a young age.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have now like this amazing group of people like James Kircher, who was a guest on yours, who introduced us. Like
Absolutely.
James has introduced me to some amazing people, and he's become a dear friend and someone that I admire so much. And if I wasn't, curious and open to meeting him or learning about him, I never would have happened. I never would have met you. And it's amazing, like this snowball and how much fulfillment you can get from your social capital.
Absolutely.
And so whether it's a relationship with your spouse, your coworkers, your friends, whoever, like it leads to these amazing outcomes and opportunities that you never even think were possible. I mean, so
cool.
So yeah.
Now you've said this a couple times. You've mentioned the word servant a couple times, and then earlier you put servant and leadership together. So explain to me, like, kind of what does it mean to be a servant leader or in servant leadership? Like, what is that? Because I think there's a lot of perspectives out there in the world. I don't think I know there are. There's a lot of perspectives out there in the world, Matt, in regards to what is leadership. So a type of leadership is that, servant leader or servant leadership. So just break that down a little bit, and why is it important for you to live in that type of leadership as opposed to maybe a different type of leadership?
It's just, it's just kind of at the core of who I am. Like I feel like my purpose is, it's to, curiously listen so I can compassionately serve. Like I have found, like through, like I mentioned, through working in the golf business, like when I help someone, I selfishly feel good about myself. It's like this zero sum. It's not a zero sum equation. Like I help them move forward, and it helps me move forward. And to me, being a servant leader is leading in every interaction and trying to make each time you have an experience with them better. Like I mentioned with Arnold Palmer and with Tony Robbins, they make each experience with those people better. And that's what I want to take away by being a servant leader. And that could be something as simple as buying them a coffee. It could be introducing them to an investor or a friend or a potential boss. Right. Or it could be just sitting down and listening to a friend who's going through a really difficult time. Right. I mean, there's so many ways you can do that, but just every interaction, you have the opportunity to be a leader or not. And
for sure.
I'm not probably not ever gonna be, a famous person that you maybe consider a leader, but it doesn't have to be like this monumental thing. I can just do little things every day.
Absolutely.
Amen. That can make a profound impact on the world.
Beautiful. Okay, so a couple more things here, and then we're gonna wrap it up. You spent time out in Colorado growing up. Obviously, we both live out here now for several years. So is there maybe one or two kind of like favorite Colorado spots that you have that maybe you and your wife like to go to, hiking, things like that? What are a couple of those go-to Colorado spots that you wouldn't mind sharing with the listeners, Matt?
I think we could spend all day.
Yeah, no, I know. I've asked this a lot, and it's like, that alone could be a 2-hour podcast, but
yeah, I mean, we're so blessed to be in this incredible state.
For sure.
And it's interesting. Like I kind of, when I first moved here, I literally would go somewhere every weekend because I was just so enamored by it. And I kind of got away from that now. I'm reeling it back in, but I was just I did Capitol, which is a 14er outside Aspen in the Elks Range. That mountain is phenomenal. It's this beautiful 6-mile approach up to a lake, and then it's this really technical Class 4 climb. I'm really into like hiking and climbing, and this is the most technical standard route standard route 14er in Colorado.
Wow, cool.
And so that place, Aspen, and the Elks Mountains, I think are some of the most stunning mountains out there. So another just place we love to go locally, up to Fall River Reservoir and St. Mary's Glacier is a really close place that people love. I usually road bike up Mount Evans every year, every summer. That's an amazing amazing place to be able to bike up a 14er is really cool. And then golf. I mean, I think part of the reason I love golf so much is just I get to be outdoors in nature.
Yeah, for sure.
So anytime I'm out on a golf course, I don't care if it's the local muni or if it's, Cherry Hills Country Club. I just feel blessed to be out in that place. And usually when you can do it with someone else that you care about, it just makes it that much better.
For sure.
So it's more about, being with great people, and that's what makes the experience better one.
And that's not a surprise that you said that, because that's the whole conversation with you, Matt, and I absolutely love it because it's powerful and it's truth. It's just like, it's not necessarily like what you're doing or what you're involved with. It's about the people you're around, So with that being said, the last question I have, which I'm pretty confident I could probably answer this one, but I'm going to let you answer it because you are the guest. But the final question that I have for you, Matt, is what lights you up?
How'd you know?
Say it, man. Just say it, right?
It's human connection and social capital. And, to be more specific, it's been having this human connection with my wife. And for those of you who are maybe going through something that is a tougher time or whatnot, like, there's hope. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, but it is well worth it. And I am so grateful for my wife and for our commitment to growth and building social capital in our relationship. So
cool.
That's it, man. Hopefully,
I love it, man. It's like I said, it's truth. It's good stuff, man. And that's really what life is all about, is being connected with other individuals. So, Matt, that kind of wraps things up for our podcast conversation. If somebody wants to reach out to you in regards to maybe just networking, if they want to reach out to you in regards to maybe some financial assistance or check out more about kind of that side of things, where can people find out more about you and what you have to offer?
Sure, yeah. Before we sign off, I just want to express my gratitude to you, Quentin, for having me on the show and for the amazing questions and your servant leadership.
Thank you. Yeah.
So thank you.
For sure.
Where you can find me, I don't do a ton of social media. Like, I don't post a lot, but my handle on Twitter and Instagram is @StewartCCU18. Stewart, and CCU stands for Coastal Carolina University. And then LinkedIn, I do a bunch on LinkedIn, I guess. And then my email is matt.stewart.co, which is short for Colorado, @gmail.com. So feel free to ping me. Would love to connect and just chat or help serve in some capacity.
Beautiful. All right. And also, we mentioned his name earlier too, but James Kircher, shout out to you.
Yes,
he's the one that introduced us through email, and the reason why we're connected right now, Matt, is because of you, James, and I'm pretty confident you're going to be listening to this. And so thank you, James, for being a cool dude, a good dude, and connecting Matt and myself. It's greatly appreciated. And once again, Matt, thank you for sharing your story with myself and the 127 Fit listeners, and just kind of taking time out of your Sunday to hang out with myself. So, listeners, per the usual, as always, your time is greatly appreciated. Your listening ears are greatly appreciated. If you would like to find out more about my guests that I'm bringing on to the 127 Fit podcast, if you would like to kind of find out a little bit more about myself, you can find me on Instagram. The first Instagram would be @127fitness. That's going to be a little bit more focused on the podcast and my guests and things like that. The personal Instagram is @QVars. Facebook is @QuentinVars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please leave a 5-star rating and review, and also subscribe to the podcast, that would be awesome. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance that you think would be a great guest or guest, please just send me an email or give this email out to that friend or an acquaintance. And the email is 127fit@gmail.com. And as you guys are finding great value in the podcast and specific episodes, if you would just take that episode or episodes that you're finding that great value in and share them on your Facebook and Instagram stories, that would be greatly appreciated. And as you share that episode or episodes on your Facebook and Instagram stories, please use the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And then, per the usual, I will leave you guys with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time until next time, I will catch you guys later.